Addio bei giorni passati, mia piccola amica, ti devo lasciar. Gli studi son già terminati, abbiamo finito così di sognar. Lontano andrò, dove non so.
There are more than 4,000 Italians in the eastern part of Ireland, some 600 families, most of them in the catering trade. They've been part of the Irish scene, certainly in Dublin, for as long as most of us can remember.
Siamo partiti il 7 di agosto, siamo tornati il 17 settembre.
È stato un prezzo di stato, ho detto qua, bevete questo, volete mangiare quello.
The ice cream parlour with Cafola over the door, the fish and chipper with Borza or Morelli, Damasio, Forte, Fusco del Rio or Cassoni as proprietor in residence is part of the childhood of most of us. The winey smell of vinegar, the hot sizzling of frying chips, of ice cream cornets are redolent of youth in the Dublin suburbs. Ray wings, cod and whiting, fried by Italians for Irish Friday fare, handed over the counters by dark-skinned men and women, the first touch of foreignness to most of us. The Italians are by far the biggest foreign community in this country. There have been two streams of emigration to Ireland from Italy during this century. The first just after the 1914-18 war, the second in the late 1940s and 50s. But of course there'd been a tradition of Italian trade and commerce with Ireland for centuries. The first Italians to arrive here were not the Romans. They came in fact with the Normans, the Lombardis and the powerful Nico family, bankers, moneylenders, wine importers. Then in the 18th century, the stucadors, the plaster workers who so beautifully embellished the great Irish Georgian houses.
Rather elaborate sort of stuff. That's the bunch cake.
It's a lot.
Thanks very much.
Just
I'll hang on to them, look after them carefully.
Leave from video then.
Thank you.
Carla got for you Bianconi, King of the Irish Roads, which was
yeah.
co-written by his great-granddaughter.
Oh, this was old Molly.
And in the 19th century, it was Italians, the Bianconis, who gave us our first transport system. The shelves of many a library are heavy with the standard works of Italian achievement in the arts and commerce.
Nice ceilings they had in those days.
But the new Italians, the 20th century men like restaurateur Ruggero Nico, were a different breed. He's unusual in many respects, but first because he hasn't come here from the traditional emigrating ground of Frosinone province. As the Sicilians emigrated to America, so the men and women of Frosinone always chose Ireland as the land where fields were greener. And in the 1920s, in little villages like Casalatico and Valvore and Larocco, under the shadows of Monte Cassino, the men began to emigrate, their route through Glasgow to Belfast, then to Dublin. And it's mostly Italians from this province and their sons and daughters who run the fish and chip shops and the cafes and restaurants of today.
What's the purpose of these in Italian cooking?
Ruggero Nico is one of the newcomers, one of the later stream of immigrants. He came here in 1949 to work in the Italian embassy from his home near Verona, and he married another Italian who he met here. They started up a small coffee bar, worked hard, and now they own a restaurant in Dame Street in Dublin. They've had hard times and money has been short in the past.
I think the only chance we had was totally to create.
Yes, your own thing. You've got also here, I notice, vines with a fair-looking couple of bunches of grapes.
That is such a thing which we always miss very much so.
You'd never get enough for wine, presumably.
Well, we might, if you give enough time, if we be able to just, that will be the day.
They're quite young, though, aren't they?
Nico keeps his own little Italy with him. He grows the vegetables and fruits which he used to eat at home for his own table and for the restaurant. all intensively cultivated on 4 acres.
We cut them, we stuff them, we roast them, which they create a lovely dish.
And if he likes to keep Italy with him, if he grows these familiar vegetables instead of importing them, if he drinks Italian wines and plays Italian games, why in the world did he leave Italy and come to Ireland at all?
The compulsory army, which, just after the war. Well, I was young at the time and I found them. Well, I was fed up to go into the army then. I had an opportunity to come over in Ireland to work for the Italian embassy.
But you were the first of your family to come to this country, right?
No. It was already in Dublin, in Lucan House, working, an uncle of mine, which they were not wetter. I had an opportunity instead of to go into the army to coming over to working for the Italian embassy. That's what I did.
And you stayed with them for?
4.5 years altogether. I stayed with 2 individual ministers, 3 really. And then I just left the Italian embassy. And I started working in Dublin.
In your own business, first of all?
Not really in my business. First of all, we start working for what you call a macaroni factory.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing the opportunity was there to increase the business with other people, we opened another factory, which made, I think today made a very good success. I left the factory 6 or 7 years previous to that, and I decided to go on to the business which I know a little bit more about, Then I just opened a restaurant, and still have open, still running the restaurant, the business.
And what about Angela?
I just come over with Lord Moyne as a waitress. And after that I met my husband. I went in the embassy, Italian embassy work, and got married, and and I started, and it's just come up grand.
So you both came here as strangers, Nico?
Oh yeah, both stranger, we didn't know each other.
Stranger.
Never met before.
Never met before.
Did it occur to either of you when you came to this country that you, Nico, would marry an Italian girl, or that you, Angela, would marry an Italian boy?
You see, what I called me, I said I have to come all the way from Italy to come in Ireland to marry an Italian man. This was funny, this happened.
Did it ever occur to you that you might, when you came here, that you might even marry an Irishman?
Never thought of that. Never crossed my mind.
I never intended to get married at all.
Look the result.
But I'm afraid what we...
6 very nice...
Look the result.
6 very nice Italian daughters. Do they think of themselves as Italian children or Irish children?
That is the question. I think
I don't know,
the
because
best you ask to them.
Over lately, I think we serve as Irish. Here, I think we serve as Italian.
Do you find that your friends say, that's Mary, she's an Italian, or, is she just another friend?
Just another friend.
So there's no difference between you at all among your own school friends and so on?
No difference.
But with a family, a large family of girls like this, Nico, do you seek out for them Italian friends, or do they sort of find their own friends among the Irish?
Don't seek anything.
I don't believe to picking anybody. I believe they have to make their life equally as I made mine. I'm not going to selecting friendship or anything.
I don't mind who they select along the hard-working man. They give a proper support in the house. They have a proper kept feeding the house, whatever any need they have. That's all. It's not what the nationality is.
What do you think yourselves? Is Ireland now your home, or is Italy still in your minds your home?
Well, for me,
Ireland is
our way.
The oldest fish and chip shop in Dublin is Damascio's in Marlborough Street. It opened almost 50 years ago, shortly after Gino Damascio's father arrived in Ireland from Frosinone province. He was the first of his family to come to Dublin, and he couldn't speak any English. Today, his sons, Gino and Harry, run the shop.
What's up anyway, I'm sure. The one you sent now? Very much.
Gino married into an Italian family, the Pelosi's, whose daughter Maria has Passiti blood in her. And the Passitis were the first of the great Irish-Italian ice cream merchants. Again, all these families came from the one little group of villages. Why did so many of them go into the fish and chip business?
Some of the Italians had gone to England, and I think that one or two may have come over and brought this traditional English dish to Dublin. Now, I think a lot of people are under the impression that it's originally Italian, but it's not.
In fact, there are no fish and chip shops anywhere in Italy.
Go!
Hey. Yeah, I'll try some. I hope it works.
Conversation in this home is in English. There's a reluctance to teach them the Italian of the grandparents, perhaps because the Frosinone dialect is harsh and unlovely. The Damascios would like their children to learn pure Italian, if they can find a teacher for them. And lately there have been moves within the community generally to get some sort of cultural and sporting organisation going for the children. You're both the children of Italian families. Was it important to your parents, Gino, that you should have married a girl from an Italian family?
Well, I wouldn't say it was important, but we're very pleased.
Suppose you had wanted to marry somebody outside the Italian community. Would there have been trouble at home, do you think, over that?
Not so much trouble as even when I wanted to start dating Gino at the time, they were very, very strict, as I mentioned before. But then I think things got a little easier when it was an Italian that I married. Although I had many Irish friends, as I still do. We both do have many Irish friends. In fact, practically all our friends are Irish.
Yes. Do you ever go to Italy, Maria? I mean, is it
We can go, yes.
Every year we return. In fact, I've just returned. I was there for a few weeks visiting my sister, who has just recently got married to an Italian and living in Italy. I think for me, when I do go back to Italy, it's going home. My relations are there. And it's also for my children to bring them back and visit their relations. And I want to continue. And I think it's important for my children, even though they are here in Ireland and their life is in Ireland, but I don't want them ever to forget.
Dino Fusco, who owns the Ritz Cafe in Dublin, is a latter-day success story among the Italians. He came from Casalatico in 1955, but he had married Maria Cafola, Dublin-born of Casalatico parents, some years before. He has owned cafes, restaurants, a nightclub. He imports Italian wines and makes Italian specialities for delicatessen stores all over Ireland. He's very much admired by his fellow Italians as a sound businessman using modern methods. Why did he come to Ireland?
Farms after the war were not a profitable proposition any longer. So we started looking for some other thing, some other way of life. And I had married my wife here, who was Irish practically anyway. And she suggested, why not go to Ireland? And I resisted this for 4 years, before we decided to come. Eventually, I gave in, and we came to Dublin. I didn't regret it a minute, actually. She was right.
And I kept pushing Dina to come to Ireland. For me, Ireland was home. I wanted to come. But he wasn't quite sure because he didn't know the language. He didn't know what we did. everything was so different.
And you
He
can
just,
say it, pride as well.
And he's a very proud person. He just couldn't see himself leaving his own land to go somewhere else. It took 4 years to convince him.
What could have made Ireland attractive to the people of Castlatico in the first instance?
I think in the first instance was the fact it was a Catholic country, and very much, I think also probably because temperament was similar to theirs. But I think mainly because it was a Catholic country, so different from England, you know. Where they first, I think, they went first to England, and they came here through England. Some came through Scotland. They find it a little bit difficult to leave Scotland. Even your father came through Scotland. But
on the question of your father, Maria, I remember him very well as a child, and it always seemed to us as children around Fairview that he was a craftsman, first of all, and if we went in as kids, he made quite certain that we stayed away from his daughters. Was this because he wanted his daughters to marry Italians?
I don't think that came into it at all at that stage anyway. But he didn't like boys hanging around no matter what nationality they were. I think he just thought his daughters should help in the business and wait till it was the right time to get married. When an Italian boy instead came near, he went directly to your father and put his proposition to it. That means that your father knew more about him than you did, at least the serious part of it, the part that was of interest to parents. And that's the little difference. I don't think an Irish boy would have wanted to meet your father until you sort of said, look, would you like to meet my parents? Whereas an Italian one was told by his parents, go and talk to the father and see if you're accepted, if they don't throw you out as soon as you put your foot in the door.
He's thorough, he's hard-working, he's efficient. When Dino came to this country, he spoke not a word of English. Maria, Dublin-born into the Fairview Cafola fish and chip family, had to do all his interpreting for him. And as he learnt the language, he built up his business.
the way we began, anyway, like nearly every other Italian from my own town, we began in the fish and chip business, where a lot of people can tell you that the only word you have to learn is one and one. So you don't need actually a knowledge of English to do that. It's hard work, but you were doing that anyway. You didn't have to tell anybody. And when they come to meet the customer, it was only to understand what did you want, and he says one and one. Well, you know what he wanted.
What are we going to say?
We're going down to mixed country, some roots, stubbled, tillage, and some heavy cover.
Any pheasants around?
Yes, quite a few.
Good.
We hope to have a good day shooting, yes.
Well, that would be lovely.
Yes. We have plenty of cock.
The best you get out your dog because he's well used to this, you know that. Our dog is more.
Today, no one is too sure who the first of these mountainy men to reach Dublin was, but he was probably one of the Fortes. He certainly started something, because by the early 1930s, there seemed to be as many men and women from Castlatico in Ireland as there were in the village at home. The whole of the older generation of Italians, quite literally hundreds of them, come from that one group of villages clustered on the inhospitable hilltops of Frosinone. It's a pattern which echoes emigration from the west of Ireland, though on a smaller scale, and it stems from the same social evils of unemployment and lack of opportunity at home. They're part of the Irish scene, yes, and yet they seem separate. Language is obviously a barrier. They're inclined to keep to themselves outside of business. The older ones among them seem stern, patriarchal figures, inclined to keep their distance. To each other, they speak Italian, and most of them have intermarried. So they always seemed a rather exclusive, close people.
girate in seguito allo concerto. Ingrate nopi, erate celoglia vostro marito campani. Basta, cucciatevi e con maniere sane, cangiatelo lo cavaliere. Aspettatelo, è da buttare vuole che ha cangiato la lama,
Brownie, come on. You know,
a riportare le 18 e 20. Facite circolo mano manetti.
The more issue was as we said.
But this question about, you know, we shot them a few this I hope that we will go to the end.
Shot it.
And it's problem this is the matter of the tourist, right?
That's just purely that's tourist privilege to shoot at. On our guided shooting.
He's a lot of beautiful places.
Yes.
He's a lot of beautiful cocks.
Lovely cocks.
Take a mail of it. We see what we have.
You enjoyed your days?
I enjoyed it very much.
Very,
It's
very
nice
good,
to have
yes.
met you
Yeah,
and
yes.
looking forward to see you again.
I hope we have many
Later
pleasant days in the future,
Hope so.
yes. Yeah.
Listen, about those.
They work hard and they play hard.
No.
There's a verve about most things they do, whether it's gambling or shooting or eating. There's a constant closeness in business and in pleasure. They buy and sell each other's products. Nico buys his wines from Fusco, for instance, and they eat in each other's establishments. But when you see them all together, it's obvious that there's no leader of the community here, that there's little or no participation in Irish politics, for instance, that there's no effort to build up a political or commercial or cultural power base as was done by Italians in America.
Supposing you are engaged 40 or 60 hours per day, directly or indirectly, would you have the time to start, you know, looking into the political end of it? I mean, at times it's very hard to realize in the time we spend it to our business. Our business is small. Our business has to be looked after in many ways.
So what you're really saying is that
think-
all you have time for is work, really?
For the moment, yes. For the moment, I think any of our generation did the work too much with their back and less with their head. And I hope the new generation improving.
The new generation might integrate much better than we did. And probably the third generation, you might find what you say, the lawyers and the scholars, but not the first and the second.
Could I put this to you, Giuseppe, because you're a technician. You're not involved in any way in the catering trade. Why is it, do you think, that even second and sometimes third generation Italians who have come here remain in the catering trade instead of getting out into other fields? And by and large, this is true, isn't it?
I think it is true, probably. I don't know the exact reason.
Well, I don't think we need any leader at all. We here now, we accept the leaders that are here.
We're happy as we are. We lead ourselves. I agree with that. We never had a necessity for a leader. Not up to now, anyway.
Perhaps you're all too individualistic. This may well be
Possible.
They're a hard-working lot, like all emigrant groups. All their efforts are bent towards having their own business and not working for someone else. And by long hours and hard graft, most of them succeed. Younger brothers and cousins are helped to set up for themselves, are lent money, given advice. There used to be a tradition of strictness among Italian parents towards their children, but this may be dying out. In some cases, the youngsters can now go their own way, but by and large, do they expect them to go into the family business?
Well, years ago they expected you to go in. Well, I'm 23 now, but years ago they expected to go straight in. If you were old enough to work in the shop, you were to work in the shop, because I think economically then they expected you to work in the shop. But I've got older brothers and they have children. I don't think they expect their children to go into work. They give them higher education and everything else. I expect they get out. But us, I think, economically they expect us to go in. Mother said if I wanted to go to school, I could go. But being, easy in the shop, so I go to the shop. And Leslie had, no education. Not that I haven't got any.
There are other Italians in Dublin, of course. At the top, the diplomats. Second-generation Italians who are now Irish citizens don't have too much time for the embassy because they're no longer invited to the annual garden party. There are Italians here in industry and in the motor business. In Northern Ireland, there are Italians even in the Republican movement. But in the South, they are still just a little separate.
Tali la terra, luciere e lumari, e tutti così mi dicono amore. Tali la terra, luciere e lumari, e tutti così